We have a something Mazda. It's probably like a 2020. The issue is the receiver is bent down due to weight distribution on the hitch. This vehicle has a mobility hitch on it, I think for a wheelchair or some mobility type. And what's happening is, like leverage, the weight is way further back than typical items would be with a hitch. So it bent the frame on the vehicle, not the hitch. What it did was it actually ripped the frame right here and bent the frame or subframe, started bending it in this area. So our challenge is straightening and bending this receiver back to where it should be, so it's level with the car or parallel with the ground, and reinforcing this receiver so that when the customer puts their mobility attachment on it, there's no way that it's going to disrupt the frame or weaken the frame or unsafely carry the mobility unit, whatever they're hauling. There's a couple other things to consider though. One is, if you have something hanging off the back of your car right here with tongue weight like a trailer, that's not a big deal, okay? The trailer's holding itself. But when you're adding something way back here, what if you slam on the brakes and you have some heavy weight back here that hitch is holding? What if you go over a big dip in the highway and your car's moving a little more than usual and you have this added weight in the back? That's what we have to take into consideration before we just make this thing strong enough to haul some weight way back here. Because this bar is roughly the length of the platform that holds the mobility unit, which I'm thinking is a wheelchair, but it may be a scooter. I don't really recall. I didn't see that. But here's what we're looking at. You're hauling something like this around. Customers driving on the highway doing 70 miles an hour. They got to slam on their brakes or swerve to miss a deer or whatever. This back here is going to want to control the trajectory of the front wheels, whether it's a small amount or a large amount. It's going to be more than the vehicle was designed to handle when it was built at the factory. So what I'm thinking is possibly heavier duty rear shocks just to stabilize the vehicle. The sway bar, the anti-sway bar, there's not much we can do with, okay? It's going to be a factory anti-sway bar. But is there a heavier bar we can put in with heavier sway links that might allow the vehicle to, when you take a corner, be a little stiffer ride? I don't think we could really do air shocks in the back of this, but if we had to, could we do airbags in these springs? Kind of like the airbags that snowplows put on the front of a vehicle. Your truck, if you put a plow on it, you could put airbags in the front to keep that front higher and more level with that gigantic plow on the front. So what we're thinking today is we're going to design this vehicle and this receiver hitch as if you're putting, let's just say, a small snowplow on the back of the vehicle instead of the front. Because when you're driving a plow on the front of your truck down the highway, same process. Ton of weight on the, or not a ton, but a lot of weight on the front of the truck, and you can't control and maneuver it like you normally can. So we have an idea of how we're going to do this, and we're going to talk to the customer to see if they concur, and if they want us to proceed in that direction. We're going to take this bumper cover off, and we're basically going to slightly customize this receiver and make further contact points on the frame, reinforced areas on the subframe, and see if we can't make it so that in order to move this, you'd have to almost bend the back of the vehicle. That's the idea. The customer wants it extra strong. And it's also kind of a time restraint on it. The customer needs this thing every day, okay? They don't have a vehicle that they can use to haul this mobility device around. And it is necessary because there's other considerations and other appointments that have to be made. So we have a plan here today, and we're going to present it to the customer and then move forward with repairing this. And hopefully everything's good, but there's no way to know, of course, till we start performing the work. We have an engineering design, we have an idea, but ultimately we're flying blind and kind of designing this kind of as we go. All right, so we have the bumper cover off the rear, and we're considering utilizing the bumper bar bracket or a supported area of the bumper bar mounting surface as one of our surfaces to reinforce and basically customize this hitch to an extension to keep that downward force at a minimum, or have extra support for downward force. We still haven't arrived at what we're doing up front, but here's where we're at right now, and we're moving forward. The customer approved whatever engineering design we come up with to stabilize this. Keeping in mind, when we straighten this receiver back out, are we going to do additional damage to the frame to get it back in the position it needs to be? That hasn't been decided yet, but we are moving forward at this point. We'll straighten this before we actually do any repairs to make sure that we're not just trying to attach that to the frame without making sure everything is like in the position it needs to be in. So the customer asked if we could use heavier duty bolts for this application because on the previous hitch, one of the 4 mounting bolts snapped according to the customer. Bolts rust, bolts snap. It doesn't take much if you've ever had a broken lug nut stud or just were turning a nut or a bolt and it snaps, you know how weak they can be. These are grade 8 bolts. Grade 5 would have been very suitable, but these are pretty heavy duty. There's an interesting point if you ever want an extremely heavy duty bolt or fastener because you have a lot of torque or tension on an object. If you take a grade 8 bolt and you put a grade 5 nut on it, you have a grade 5 bolt or fastener. If you take a grade 8 bolt, and they're very expensive, and put a regular nut on, like the type that came with this hitch, you do not have a grade 8 fastener anymore. In order for a fastener to be a grade 5 or a grade 8 or a higher grade even, all of the parts need to be of that grade. So we have grade 8 bolts, grade 8 washers, grade 8 nuts. So this application will have grade 8 fasteners holding this hitch on. We're also making a custom washer, way different than the washers that came with this, which a lot of people that have installed hitches on their cars, these look familiar. They come with the vehicle, or excuse me, with the hitch to go in the vehicle. This one was getting dragged through and is cracked. This one obviously is cracked. So there was so much tension on this hitch, on this receiver, that it was bending this and pulling it through the vehicle frame. That's not going to happen anymore. We're making a custom bracket out of mild steel. We'll treat it, put elongated holes in it. So if one bolt is going to pull through the frame, you're going to have to pull both or all 3 or all 4 bolts in this case through your frame at one time in order to lose your receiver. This will be way heavier duty. The previous question of can we get heavier duty shocks or airbags, there seems to be so far an application where we can get, it's called load leveler shocks or overload springs on shocks. However, we haven't found the exact application. We're working on that, but while we're working on that, we're going to proceed with this modification and substantial reinforcing of the existing receiver hitch and frame. My side's good. Ready to go under that? Alright, I'll hold it in place there if you want to start.
Have to tip down to